Okay, let's get into it real quick. So basically, there was a Nigerian underworld type figure. And I know that there's a lot going on with Somalians right now because obviously Trump is going after a lot of them that are here illegally. And to be fair, when you look at some of the court records related to the information provided, it is quite spicy as to how much fraud and abuse was actually going on. Now, the Office of Inspector General has actually been working on this case back into the Biden era. So to say that it's all Trump, all Doge, all that stuff is not really totally accurate. There was a Nigerian ring, he is the ringleader, nationwide bank fraud and money laundering conspiracies. He is sentenced to only 20 years in prison, which is kind of mind boggling because of the amount of people's lives he ruined, or at least really screwed up to the point where I don't know. To me, you let me know. Is this a 20 years, maybe a 10 years? Sort of the more, more woke people, maybe for the less woke people, maybe a 30-year thing, maybe a life in prison. But let's talk about it real quick because, there's a lot of intent here. All right. So this article is from December 2nd, 2025. This is, being done in Albany, New York. His name was Oluwaseun Adekoya, aka Ace G, aka Broda, aka Legendary, aka Santa, aka Santana, aka Sammy LeBlanco, aka Sean Mason, aka King Mason, age 40, of Cliffside Park, New Jersey. Gotta love New Jersey. Just shit happens in New Jersey. There's nowhere around it. All right. He was sentenced yesterday to 20 years in prison. Earlier this year, a jury found Adekoya guilty of bank fraud, conspiracy, money laundering conspiracy, and 9 counts of aggravated identity theft after a 3-week trial. Now, when it's a 3-week trial and the OIG has this many pages that it releases just as a press release, that it's pretty damn spicy. Let's get into it real quick. All right, so here we go. Acting United States Attorney John A. Sarcone III and Craig L. Tremorelli, whatever, special agent in charge of the Albany field office of the Federal Bureau of Investigation, made the announcement. Here we go. Proof at trial established that from the comfort of his luxury apartment in New Jersey, Adekoya, a career fraudster, obtained publicly available information regarding people's equity lines of credit, HELOCs, at localized credit unions throughout the United States, shifting his focus over time to different parts of the country to avoid law enforcement scrutiny. He then utilized encrypted messaging platforms like Telegram to obtain social security numbers, account numbers, mother's maiden names, and other personal identifying information for individuals he had identified as having substantial amounts of equity available in their HELOCs. So in other words, if their houses were worth a bunch and they could take out money against the worth of the house, he would target them. And this is not something that's uncommon. This guy was a little bit more advanced, but what usually happens, especially in Florida, like Orlando, stuff like that, is that a drug dealer will get the disabled or retired person hooked on drugs, and then they'll take their personal information, and then they'll open up a bunch of loans against that person, or they'll sell their house and then make that disabled or retired person basically move into, a homeless help facility or an elderly care facility or into the woods. He then utilized, Adekoya then gave his information to a vast web of managers he recruited from all over the country, along with fake driver's licenses for lower level workers to use to impersonate the HELOC customers and conduct withdrawal transactions on their accounts. To insulate him from detection, Adekoya utilized a web of burner phones and encrypted messaging applications and laundering his substantial share of the proceeds through bank accounts in other people's names. So in other words, all those burner phones that, homeless people get that are like Obama phones, that kind of stuff. Those types of burner phones, they just get a zillion of them. They use them to communicate with people. They use the minutes, then they place it aside once they've used up the minutes, or they'll go ahead and buy phones. But, remember, those phones every month, they rejuvenate, they get more minutes. Adekoya also reinvested some of the proceeds into continuing the fraud scheme by purchasing air and bus travel for co-conspirators, fake driver's license, and rental cars used to drive workers to credit unions. So when you understand the level of fraud going on here, he was a corporation of fraud. He was like an actual business, in business for years doing this level of fraud. Adekoya, a citizen of Nigeria, previously obtained lawful permanent resident status in the United States in 2004. Not a shocker there. In sentencing, Adekoya, U.S. District Judge May A. De Agostino noted that Adekoya is a perpetual thief and a flagrant serial offender who has orchestrated increasingly sophisticated felony identity theft and fraud offenses since he started his criminal career in 2008 at the age of 22. All right, so just to be clear, this guy was really young. He got into this country. He was doing what he was doing. He was 22. Let's see, criminal career in 2008 at the age of 22. All he knows is how to do fraud. So this person will go in for 20 years and then they'll come out. And the problem that you're going to run into with this 40-year-old something individual is that he'll come out and he will have no retirement. He won't have any way to make money other than to continue to commit fraud. So it's one of these problems where, like, what do you do with this individual? Do you train them while they're in prison for, instead of 20 years, maybe, 12 to 15 years or whatever, but do you train them how to make money in a normal way? Or is this person almost certainly going to go out and continue to use and abuse individuals who, let's just call like it is, they don't know this stuff. When a lot of people are like, well, Americans are so smart and these, and they'll say, oh, these Nigerians don't know anything. It's different culture. A lot of these Nigerians come to America and figure out how to do these very, deep, immense fraud levels where these Americans, they don't have the knowledge base as to what to do, how to handle it, what's going on with it, etc. So the problem is you have a bunch of Americans who at the end of the day, they just don't know. Some will say, oh, they're too dumb, blah, 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 blah. No, they just didn't grow up in the culture of how to mass scam. And unfortunately, in order to survive in certain countries, right, you have to come from a bit of knowing how to scam. So one of the things that I always tell people that gets people super pissed off is that disabled people usually have to be better at lying than other people, because disabled people have to know how to survive better. And that's just a skill. It just is what it is. Oh, how could you say a disabled person has to know how to lie better? Okay, well, just hang with me on this idea for a moment. Let's say a disabled person is somebody who comes from being trafficked that has PTSD. Well, if they were being trafficked and they survived to get onto disability benefits, they're a damn good liar because they knew how to get out of that situation. So just so you understand, when somebody's disabled or they're at a disadvantage, they have to know how to lie better. They have to know how to go ahead and use that as a skill to do better in life. Unfortunately, in this case, this Nigerian gentleman was an absolute piece of junk who basically screwed over a hell of a lot of people. I mean, this was a massive ring. Quote, for nearly 2 decades, Oluwaseun Adekoya abused the privilege of lawful permanent resident status to steal the identities of innocent Americans so he could live lavishly in our country. Without an ounce of remorse, acting U.S. Attorney Sarkone said, quote, now he gets to spend 2 decades in prison and he deserves every last day of his sentence. I look forward to his subsequent removal from the United States. He's going to end up back in the U.S. And look, this is what will happen with this guy. This is what almost always happens. Okay, so what will happen is he'll serve part-time. They might be keeping him in this country and they might export him, but whatever. They might deport him. He'll end up somehow coming back to this country with a stolen identity. And it'll be like a Biden, Kamala Harris type of presidency spiel where they weld open the gates and shit's a total, it's a shit show beyond belief, right? So he'll end up back in this country. And then I would say realistically, we'll probably see his name in the news again 15 to 20 years from now. And the only difference is he'll just be more, he'll know how to hack things better with computer. He'll have an entire life of learning how to scam. And when we send him to prison, he's going to learn additional tricks to do it better. But these guys always end up getting out and then they don't have any way to make money. So they have to go to what they know makes money. Now, will he end up as being a ringleader, like a Nigerian ringleader again? No, probably not. But at the same time, when a lot of people are like, well, in 20 years, everything's going to be Bitcoin oriented and you won't be able to fraud the system. There will still be people that don't use Bitcoin in America. There will still be people that don't know how to use that stuff. Okay. It's just the way it is, Special agent in charge Tremoroli stated, Mr. Adekoya spent almost 2 decades of his life creating a massive criminal network that stole from these hardworking Americans. This sentence ensures he'll spend the next 2 decades of his life in federal prison. The FBI is grateful to the numerous law enforcement and banking institution partners who provided assistance needed to take down Mr. Adekoya and his associates and ensure justice for the victims. We remain deeply committed to using every resource available to investigate and bring to justice any individual or organization focused on defrauding our citizens. I don't know. To me, this is a life in prison gig. I don't know. What do you guys think? Because to me, like, at the end of the day, this is a person who has no other way. It's like when you imprison a drug dealer where all they've done their entire life is deal drugs. They don't come out and go work at Walmart, not for more than a couple months. They have to sell drugs because it's the only way they learn how to survive. So that's their only system. That's their only way. I mean, to me, maybe you could let him out and then have him be watched constantly, but this guy's going to bop around. And see, here's the thing. The ones where they know how to essentially have a separate identity, fake identity, whatever, the ones that know how to do that, the ones that learn how to do the theft of social security numbers, create fake identities, create fake identity cards, hand it over to the police when the police pull them over and yada, yada, and it pulls through their system. There's no, like, that. They should have some of the highest levels of imprisonment time because they're the ones who are going to essentially, fraud the system over and over again. And the system's not going to be able to figure it out until a lot of harm is done. So to me, this guy is a life in prison person. He should be in prison for the rest of his life because he's just going to come out and do this again. He's just going to do it to the retired and the disabled, the elderly that don't know technology, the disabled that can't do all the things that other people can do. They're just going to do it again. So to me, and I mean, maybe this is wrong, but to me, this is a life in prison sort of situation. I don't think 2 decades is enough. I think this should be a life in prison situation. Okay, the investigation into Adeko began in May of 2022, which is during the Biden era. Just to clear up, it's during the Biden era, when Broadview Federal Credit Union, formerly Capcom Federal Credit Union, and State Employee Federal Credit Union, headquartered in Albany, identified a series of impersonation transactions at its branches in the capital region and referred the case to the FBI Albany. The ensuing investigation led to the discovery of Adeko as the mastermind of the nationwide operation and the prosecution of 13 additional co-conspirators through a series of superseding indictments, all of whom pled guilty for their roles in the offenses prior to trial. I mean, this is a corporation. This is a 14-person corporation. This is a small, medium business. Yeah. The defendant's conspiracy were brought to a screening halt by his federal arrest on an initial indictment on December 12, 2023. He has since been detained, and the government twice superseded the indictment to add additional co-conspirators and charges because, they kept figuring stuff out as they got more phones. He destroyed a bunch of his phones, by the way, before they could get to it. But the bottom line is they did get some of the phones there. Evidence at trial showed that when the FBI attempted to, here it is. When the FBI attempted to enter the defendant's luxury apartment on December 12, 2023, to execute a federal search warrant, Adekoya wiped the primary phone he had used to orchestrate the conspiracy. Nonetheless, the FBI seized numerous burner phones used by Adekoya to perpetrate the charged crimes. The FBI also seized Rolex watches, a $51,000 Tiffany engagement ring, designer handbags and shoes, and approximately $26,000 in a bank account used by Adekoya to launder his proceeds. Those items and others have since been forfeited by the government. Okay. So in other words, like that super wealthy looking Nigerian guy who's got, bling on his wrist and bling on his arm, his little shorty or whatever, lovely super model-esque whatever woman that has all of these beautiful handbags and beautiful this and beautiful that. Like, unfortunately, the classic thing that we try not to think of as a particular individual, not to think of as a particular culture, that's what you got here. You got a guy who basically has that set up. And it's sad because this sends a very clear message to other people who culturally are near to him that essentially if you abuse, disabled people, retired people, people with money in their house, available money to take out as a HELOC, what he basically did was he told them this is how to get free from, having a regular job, which sucks, especially for somebody like me, who's a disability attorney, who's, still north of 250,000, south of 300,000 student loans. And I've been paying on those for my entire life. So my entire work life, I've been pretty much paying on those. So As part of Adekoya's sentence, he will also be required to serve 5 years of supervised release and pay restitution of over $2.2 million and a mandatory special assessment of $1,100. He's also subject to removal from the United States upon completion of his term of imprisonment. He'll be back. He'll be back. To me, it's just, guys, life in prison. He's just going to beat the system again. He's a mastermind at taking over people's lives. The following co-defendants previously pled guilty in connection with the conspiracies and were sentenced as follows: David Danian, aka Bamako Lanian, aka David Enfield, aka Africa, age 61 of Brooklyn, New York, pled guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to commit bank fraud, 1 count of money laundering, conspiracy, and 1 count of aggravated identity theft. Danian was sentenced to 54 months of incarceration, 1 year of supervised release in order to pay over $2.2 million in restitution. This is big. You know what I mean? Like you got the mastermind over here, 2 decades, 2.2 million. You got his second in charge here, or whatever he was in the lineup, called Africa, 61 Brooklyn, 2.2 million in restitution, 54 months of incarceration, which is nothing. 1 year of supervised release, nothing. How's he going to pay back 2.2 million in restitution? You know what I mean? Like this, he's got to go back to stealing your social security numbers. That's what he's going to have to do, you know? Connie Bassi, aka Money, it's just the money sign. Age 36 of Brooklyn, New York, pled guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to commit bank fraud, 1 count of money laundering conspiracy, and 1 count of aggravated identity theft. Bassi was sentenced to 11 years incarceration, 5 years of supervised release, and will be ordered to pay restitution in the amount to be determined by the court at a later date. And the real harm here is that you have a bunch of disabled and retired people where their taxes are all effed up. Their banks, everything. No bank will trust them because now they've had their stuff stolen and which is ironic because it was stolen by the banks. Like the banks are the problem here. They should have caught it sooner. But bottom line is you have these guys who basically just add to that persona of being of that culture, of that race, of that skin color or whatever. And now everybody's like trying to say, oh, they don't do that stuff, such a nice kid. And then clearly this is the exact, what I mean? So it's just you got Connie, aka Money, you got David Denayan, aka Africa, and that's part of the problem. And I guess what pisses me off about it is that, like, I don't make enough to make enough to make enough. Like, I just don't. So at the end of the day, like, what's frustrating to me is, like, I am a keeper of private information. Like, I'm a vault. People send stuff to me. People talk to me about private stuff in every phone call conversation that I have with the law firm. And, I think one of the things you have to keep in mind, like, when you first, as an attorney, start doing that stuff, the law firm stuff, your brain's like, oh, wow, that's important information. Oh, wow, that's important information. But then when you get jaded like me and you've owned the law firm for over 12 years, like, no information. When people tell me horrific information or mind-boggling information, nothing really registers. It just, I think what happens is you get so used to it that the soul of the words of how immoral, unethical, or really moral, or really ethical, it just doesn't affect you anymore. Davon Hunter, aka his name was Scams. Jesus. You know what I mean? It's just like, come on now. Age 27. If you think I'm full of it, it's literally right there. AKA Scams. Age 27 of Richmond, Virginia, pled guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to commit bank fraud, 1 count of aggravated identity theft. Hunter was sentenced to 42 months incarceration, 3 years of supervised release in order to pay $469,499.18 in restitution. His restitution is around what my education cost. College, master's, doctorate, other certificates. His restitution is around what my education cost. That's how effed our system is. You got a bunch of old retired people going like, screw those young millennials. Don't let them buy a house. Let them work and get low wages. Yeah, the only kicker is we get paid low wages and can't afford to grow any new businesses. Guess what can't be paid for? You guessed it, retirement benefits. Sprinkle a little knowledge every time you can to help people understand that student loans are killing retirement benefits. It's really that simple. It's really, and that and lack of birth. You have people who constantly, like the moment you tell the government I have this much money coming in from like the payroll company, the government's like, okay, cool. We're going to boost up how much you got to pay in student loans. We're going to do that. Anytime you tell the insurance, how much you make in health insurance, boom, you're paying more per month. They just suck whatever you make. There's no like saving. People don't have real savings accounts anymore. Not like back in the day where it was like, I'll save my pennies. And the pennies are worth, thousands of dollars now in today's terms. But like, there's no savings anymore for millennials. Millennials and younger, there's none of that. So next one, Christian Quivers. These names are just, and that was the real name. Christian Quivers, aka Denzel Carter. Although Denzel Carter does sound like a lead role character. I gotta say, out of Scams, Money Sign, Africa, out of these names, Denzel Carter sounds like the best name as a lead Hollywood character. Okay, here we go. Oh, sorry. His other ones were AKA E. Just the letter E. I think Denzel Carter is better though. Age 20. Oh, he's very young. He hasn't had enough time to figure out what his pseudo name should actually be. He's got an E and he's got Denzel Carter. Such a shit show. Age 20, Richmond, Virginia, pled guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to commit bank fraud and 1 count of aggravated identity theft. Quivers was sentenced to 42 months at 20 years old. Incarceration, 3 years of supervised release in order to pay $385,650 in restitution. A 20-year-old, aka E, has to magically come up over his life and pay back all the disabled and retired people $385,650 in restitution. Man, oh man, I drive a 2010 beat to hell Prius that I have owned since 2010. These guys are going to be driving bars in prison, but boy, they had it good for a while there, didn't they? Next one, Jerome Brooks, aka, here you go. Here's the hip hop namer. JB. It's just J-A-Y with a big B. Just J-A-Y. So big J, little A-Y, big B. There you go. AKA Beezy. If you want it to be like intimidating, I don't know if I choose Beezy. It just sounds like Little Beezy. Little Beezy over there doing a little bit of fraud. Little Nigerian wonder, right? Little Nigerian magic. Little jazz fingers with the Nigerian magic there. Age 20 of he's young, that's why. Of Richmond, Virginia, pled guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to commit bank fraud and 1 count of aggravated identity theft. Brooks was sentenced to 36 months of incarceration, 2 years of supervised release in order to pay $385,650 in restitution. So essentially, Lil Breezy over here, aka JB, aka Jermon Brooks, which, by the way, I just got to be honest with you. When your pseudo name to protect yourself from the authorities is JB, but your real name is Jermon Brooks, you got to wonder, are you really good at self-security? Because I don't feel like this kid understood that the name is not supposed to be similar to your real name. I'm just trying to be a fair person here. So we got another 20-year-old who owes $385,650 in restitution over his life, because that'll happen. We got an attorney who's owned a law firm for 12 plus years, still just under $300,000 on paying back his student loans. But hey, you know what I mean? Well, why not? We got a system that works. The whole thing's falling apart. Akeem Bologun, age 56 of Brooklyn, New York, pled guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to commit bank fraud. Brooks was sentenced to 21 months incarceration, so got around 2 years. 2 years of supervised release in order to pay $262,200 in restitution. Damn. Victor Barrera, age 64 of Bronx, New York, pled guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to commit bank fraud. Barrera was sentenced to time served, 3 years of supervised release in order to pay $203,352 in restitution. These are never going to be paid off. Some of these guys are going to be deported the moment that they finish their actual sentence. And what are they going to do? Pay us in Nigerian money? Some of these are locals to America, or the naturalized citizens, or they are citizens, but still, the people that get deported, what are they going to do? Pay us in Nigerian currency? Come on. Danielle Capetti. Oh, now we're getting into classic tri-state area names here. Danielle Capetti, age 46 of Bronx, New York, pled guilty. 1 count of conspiracy to commit bank fraud, Capetti was sentenced to time served, 3 years of supervised release in order to pay $142,796 in restitution. That's a house, man. 150 grand. That's a house. That's a house right there. Jarjuan Joyner, age 50 of Brooklyn, New York, pled guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to commit bank fraud. Joyner was sentenced to 12 months incarceration, 3 years of supervised release in order to pay $135,998 in restitution. Geisha Kennedy, age 46 of Brooklyn, New York, pled guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to commit bank fraud. Kennedy was sentenced time served, 2 years of supervised release in order to pay restitution in the amount of $24,500. Crystal Kirshner, age 44 of Brooklyn, New York, pled guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to commit bank fraud. Kirshner was sentenced to time served, 3 years of supervised release in order to pay $220,850 in restitution. Sherry Osmore, age 56 of Richmond, Virginia, pled guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to commit bank fraud. Osmore was sentenced to time served, 3 years of supervised release and restitution in the amount of $229,303.18. Millions upon millions. I mean, you got, just to go through the math again, you got 2.2 million, a bunch of, 300,000s plus 400,000, a bunch of 200,000s, 100,000s, millions upon millions of dollars of people who basically could have, should have, would have been protected, but they lost their homes. They had massive debt against them. They frauded all these banks, etc. Co-defendant Leslie Lachezi, age 53 of Manhattan, previously pled guilty to 1 count of conspiracy to commit bank fraud and is scheduled for sentencing next year. So we got another one that's coming. FBI Albany investigated the case and obtained invaluable assistance from numerous law enforcement agencies all over the country. Those include FBI, New York, Chicago, Newark, Richmond, New Jersey, places, blah, blah, blah. U.S. Department of State Diplomatic Security Services, U.S. Social Security Administration, Office of the Inspector General, U.S. Postal Inspection, New York Law Enforcement, yada, yada, yada. And it just goes on and on. Police departments, just goes on. Sheriff's departments, let's see what else. It's a lot. Like, just to understand, and remember, this is the cost of investigating and finding fraud. They went through all of these different agencies, all these different police departments, all these different sheriffs, all these different administration functions just to get these guys. So what do we learn? Well, we learn that disabled and retirees are targets. We learn that people coming into this country from other countries do commit fraud. We learn that they're probably never going to be able to pay back the restitution, which means they will be barred from doing whatever in the future, but they're just going to change their identity anyway. So, they'll play the game. What we learn from this is that, locking your credit, freezing your whatever, it's just not effective enough against some of these individuals. I think at the end of the day, what we really have to do is have life sentences, and somehow for people that commit crimes like this, have it so that they are tied in a much more genetic way, like from their blood, not a social security number, but from their blood. Basically we are able to find out who they are, what they're doing, etc. Because the problem is they're just going to grab another social security number. They're just going to grab another fake ID card. They're just going to create all that stuff because these are the people who literally manufacture, process, have warehouses, and create this situation. So from my perspective, you have to have a punishment that will work for identity theft people. And identity theft people are some of the worst people on earth because they will usually be able to beat the system again. Because, remember, the FBI is on one side trying to figure out how to make it safer. And then you got a bunch of retired and disabled people who accidentally give their, social security number away, their contact information away, stuff like that. So, you're like trying to deal with that. And now their socials out there. But I mean, to be fair, December 2023, this is always my favorite part of the timeline. So Biden gets in claiming that it was the most fair election, the most secure election that ever happened on earth, as we were getting constant updates on our cell phones, our iPhones, about how there were data breaches and leaks and how they had to update the server software on our iPhones and the OS system, operating system on our iPhones to make it more secure because of all the breaches. So then we get to the latter part of that year, and Biden comes out with an executive order saying we have to do much more as a government to protect private information that the government holds. Then in December of 2023, the largest massive theft of social security numbers, addresses, phone numbers, names that has ever occurred in the history of America, right? Pretty much almost everybody's social security number, name, all that stuff ended up on the dark web. And here's the best part. Here's the best part about it. So just so any of you sitting there, you're like, my social security number is secure because it's in my bank vault. No, 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 don't be that stupid. Please don't be that stupid. Okay. You have a lot of space in life, but you don't have the right to be that stupid because you're just going to end up for this Nigerian ringleader. You're just going to end up his bait. So the bottom line is this, right? So this massive fraud occurs. A hacker hacks it, tries to basically sell it to people. And then another hacker hacks that hacker and posts it to the dark web so that anybody can download it. Because hackers have a little bit of asshole in them. They do, but they also have a little bit of irony in them. So it is what it is. So final thoughts. Final thoughts is you got to protect yourself and do what you can to learn more about how to protect yourself. Now, with that said, I'm going to go ahead and go live tonight. I'm going to try anyways. It's just everything's so cold up here. Everything takes forever. Walking the dogs is like a whole thing. It's a whole thing because you're going out in the snow. You have to have a jacket that warms you. It's ridiculous. With that said, I don't do Medicare stuff. So if you have any Medicare questions, and we're going to be doing videos pretty soon on some of the new fraud they found. If you have Medicare questions, especially if you're wondering if you have essentially a Medicare program that isn't going to have a doctor that's arrested or a doctor's staff that's going to be arrested or like a doctor's back office that was like overcharging, a lot of that stuff was going on. A lot of that. It was so bad, some facilities, including the Village's Health, self-reported that they were criminals and said, we really hope that you can look at this and figure this out, FBI, and blah, 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 blah. And yeah, it was that bad. Trump gets in because they know with Biden they can get away with murder. Trump gets in, and then all of a sudden they start self-reporting. It's just amazing. It's like and when people ask me like, why am I hard on Biden? Sometimes I'm hard on Trump too. It's just there's more shit that Biden did that was at levels of treason that I've never seen in my life. I will never see him. I think I could be surprised. I will never see a president that inept ever in the future. Like, I don't think I will. I mean, he was medically unsound, incapable of having a conversation. They marched him around in a suit and barely could get him to go ahead and complete, activities. I've never seen incompetence at that level. And yet I never saw so many people go along with it. And I was one of it in the beginning. I was like, look what he's going to do for Social Security. He didn't do shit. We got O'Malley, and that was the main thing. We got O'Malley, and then we got the commissioner prior to O'Malley. Those were really good. His 2 picks for that. Beyond that, we didn't get any legislation that really helped Social Security, which was very sad. We did get rule changes at Social Security with O'Malley and Kijikazi in there, which was great, but we didn't get any support from him in the way that I thought we were going to get. Anyways, point is, I don't do Medicare stuff. You have Medicare questions. You want to know what's going on with the fraud. You want to get a checkup on your Social Security benefits, or rather your checkup on, how good your Medicare program actually is. Give them a call if they're watching that stuff. All right. With that said, I'm going to try and go live tonight and answer questions for free. I'm making a concerted effort for it. I'm actually going to be in between meetings today, setting up what the future videos are going to be, locking them in on the calendar tonight so that I know timeline-wise when I have to go live. I have had a very stressful past couple of weeks because I've been getting like accounting stuff done. I've been getting health insurance stuff done. I've been getting home insurance stuff done. And, that stuff is a pain in the butt. But this is one of the things you have to keep in mind too. A lot of you don't realize this, but my life is shit. It's total crap. A lot of people are like, what am I going to do today? How am I going to feel today? What's going on? What's on my agenda for what I want to complete today? I don't get personal time. Everybody's life, everybody's problems, everybody's Social Security disability issue are my issues. So they suck up the grand majority of the day, and then I get a little time to work on the house, work on the property, and then I go live usually. But I've just been so tired because it's so cold. Like walking those pupperoos around in the snow. I mean, we go all the way to the bottom of the property, all the way back. I get wiped out. So I will catch you tonight. I promise I'm going to set up the videos over the next couple of hours to go and be present so that I'm locked in for the timeline. We got to do them. I will catch you tonight. We'll rock and roll. Please be nice to Kosher. Kosher puts up with a level of shit from a lot of people that is not pleasant. Please be nice to kosher. And then also, very important, please be nice to yourself. If you see an opportunity to take a moment and think through a list of all the things that you've done in life that are positive for you and that you deserve them and that you deserve more things in the future, that's always a good place to start. I never get to do that, but I think I'm going to try doing a little of that today. I will catch you all a little bit later. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, and I'll see you tonight. Thank you so much. Attorney Walter Hnot. Bye-bye, everybody. Bye-bye.